Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the lesson today. We're going to talk about theory, so that's probably why you clicked onto this video. Maybe you're having trouble wrapping your mind around basic theory, or maybe you're just having trouble understanding how to use theory in your own playing. So, whatever the case is, we're going to break that down. We're just going to get started with a really simple guide to music theory and how we can relate it to the guitar. So, go ahead and grab your guitar, tune up, and let's get right into it. Alright guys, so when I teach music theory, I like to start with a major scale. It's the most basic thing here to understand, and it's going to be kind of laying the groundwork for all the other theoretical ideas we're going to talk about here. Because everything just kind of lays around a major scale. From a major scale to work out our other modes and chords and things like that, all we usually have to do is lower a note or raise a note, things like that. So I know that sounds kind of complicated, so don't overthink it. Don't try to wrap your brain around it too much. I'm going to explain what I mean here, so hopefully you're not going to get confused by this. So let's go ahead and just start with our major scale. An A major, that'll be on the 5th fret of our E string. And we know on guitar we can obviously play that in that position using multiple shapes or different kind of ways here. So that was the first one. We know we could play it like this. Right, so there's multiple ways we can play it, but I don't want you to worry about all of that at this moment. What I want you to do is just focus on that one shape here. And we're going to use that shape to create what's known as the modes. There's 7 of them because there are 7 notes in the major scale. So if we use that logic that there's 7 notes in the major scale, we're going to take that idea, that 7, and apply that to each of the notes in the major scale. So to simplify that, we're going to assign a number to each note in the major scale here. So let's go ahead and start on A, our first. Here's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, roots. Again, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and roots. So now the importance of this is we can use that to understand intervallic functions between the roots in each of the notes in the scale. So let's go ahead and kind of experiment with that idea here. So here, let's take our roots, and here's our second note. I know we said it's here, but we want to experiment with these notes against the root. So if we have 1 and 2, sounds a little muddy, but we know that that is our major seconds. So let's go ahead and test that for every note within the major scale. So here's 1 and 2, here's 1 and 3, there's our major third, major fourth, major fifth, major sixth, major seventh, and here is an octave. So for you to work on that and understand it, I would suggest just doing that. Try to understand the relationship and how it feels to play each of the notes in that scale against its root. So again, here's 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 1 and 5, 1 and 6, 1 and 7, and 1 and 1. So that gives you all of the intervallic functions for a given key. So now when we take this approach of using intervallic functions or numbering each of the notes in the scale, we don't have to worry so much about the note names. Obviously, if you're in a jam and the key of the jam is in F sharp, obviously you should know where to find F sharp on the neck, right? You should know all the spots that F sharp exists. But the beauty of this idea of intervallic functions is that we don't have to know all the note names anymore. As long as we can find the key center or the root of where we're at, then the shapes kind of stay the same. So say the key is now C sharp major, which is right here or here. We can take the same function idea and apply that to this new key. So, all right, so here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 roots. So you can test this against the intervallic functions of this new key now. So it's all going to be the same shapes. So kind of play around with that, pick and choose the keys that you like to play in, or find out the keys of the songs you're liking to jam to, that sort of thing, and test these intervallic functions against that sort of thing, all right? All right, so now the next thing that we can do here with the numbered method of our scales and the notes in the scale, the intervallic functions idea here, what we can do is we can use this to create the scales and the chords that correspond to each key. So let's go ahead and start with that major scale again. Now if we play this scale up and down, and we go to the next note of the scale and do the same thing, but stay in that same key. Now we're creating what's called our modes, and this is super important. This is going to allow you to create new tools and new sounds that you can use within a key. So a lot of the times guitar players find themselves caught up in playing the same licks and ideas every time they improvise or play solos. They're feeling stuck, like they can't play a lot of different things, or they're playing boring lines because they're playing the same things over and over again. So what we're going to do here with the modes is we're going to kind of get rid of that feeling of being stuck, and we're going to create new ways to play. But that comes from an understanding of the modes and how to apply and use them, and also memorizing how they feel and look across the fretboard. So to figure this out, we're going to go ahead and start with that root again, and we want to keep this sound. We want to keep that A major sound in our head as we go through each of these. So let's go ahead and start on that root. First mode, we call this the Ionian mode. Number 1 is Ionian. And there are no sharps or flats in the Ionian mode. That's what makes it pretty simple here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 roots. Now if we take that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 root and apply it to each of the notes that exist in that major scale. So let's start on the next note. We're going to play the same shape. It's not going to sound correct at first, but we're going to make adjustments to make it sound correct. So we're going to go ahead and play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 roots. Obviously, that did not sound right, so we need to make those adjustments here. So that second mode is called our Dorian mode, and to create a Dorian mode, we need to take that initial shape and flat the third note and flat the seventh note to create that Dorian sound. So here we go. Here's 1, 2, 3. We need to bring that note down a half step. 4, 5, 6. That's our major 7. Remember we said we need to flat the third and seventh note. So now we have this note. So here is our new Dorian mode. So let's go back to our root. Now here's the Dorian mode. Alright, so let's move on to our third mode here, the Phrygian mode. So to get the Phrygian mode, we need to take a major scale shape, and we're going to flat the second, the third, the sixth, and the seventh notes. So that looks like this. So here's 1, 2, 3. Let's play our major scale shape. Alright, so now let's start working through finding our flat 2, flat 3, flat 6, and flat 7. So here's 1, there's 2. We need to bring that down a half step. 3, 4, 5. There's our flat 6, flat 7, and our roots. Now you can test these against the root to make sure you are still in the key and that you're finding the correct notes to create these modes. So again, let's check back with our first mode. Now as we move through these, it should sound like we're still playing in that key of A major. So far so good. So let's go ahead and move to our fourth mode. So let's go ahead again, start with that major scale shape. The fourth mode is known as what we call Lydian, And to find a Lydian scale, we just need to sharp or raise that fourth note. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to bring that up a half step. 5, 6, 7, roots. I'm running out of neck up here. I want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing, so I'm going to jump to here for my fifth mode. You can play it here if you want while you practice, but just so you guys can see what I'm doing, I'm going to start right here. So to find our fifth mode, we're going to play that major scale shape again. And this mode's called Mixolydian, and to find our Mixolydian or fifth mode, we need to flat the seventh note of the scale. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's our flat 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, roots. And that is our fifth or Mixolydian mode. So let's go ahead and move to our sixth mode. We call this Aeolian or pure minor. It's just a straight minor scale. And to find your minor scale, we're going to flat the third, sixth, and the seventh notes of the major scale. So let's go ahead and play the major scale shape. And we're going to flat again, it's going to be the third, sixth, and seventh. So 1, 2, 3, bring that down a half step. So 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, and roots. And that is our sixth or Aeolian or pure minor mode. And then here's our last mode, the seventh. We call this Locrian. And to find the Locrian scale, you're going to flat the second, third, fifth, sixth, and seventh. So I know it's a lot of weird things going on. But this is the formula for it. So here we have 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, 8, or root, I'm sorry. 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, roots. And then we're back at our root, the Ionian or the first mode. So let's go ahead and just go through these real quick so you can get the sound in your head and remember it, and so you have something to reference back to here. So again, here's our root Ionian mode, number 1. Dorian mode. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, roots. Phrygian's going to be 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, roots. Lydian, 1, 2, 3, sharp, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Mixolydian, or 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. Aeolian or pure minor, 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, roots. Locrian or 7th, 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, roots. Again, that's 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, roots. And we're back at the Ionian mode. So the next thing we're going to do with this, once we've figured out all the modes and their scale shapes, we're going to learn the arpeggios. To form an arpeggio, we need the first, the third, the fifth, and then the root again. If you want to go for more intricate or more mature or jazz chords, you can throw that seventh in there as well, which is something I like to do. I think it just adds a little more character to your chords and the quality of the sound. So let's go ahead and go, we'll go with the first, third, fifth, and seventh for this example. Let's go ahead and play our major scale again, starting on the root. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 roots. We're just going to take the first, third, fifth, and seventh. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 5, 7, 5, 3, 1. And that's going to be our arpeggio for the first mode. So let's go ahead and take that same process for each of the modes in this key. So here's our second mode: first, third, fifth, seventh, root, 7, 5, 3, 1. Third mode: first, third, fifth, 7, 1, 7, 5, 3, 1. Fourth mode: first, third, fifth, seventh, root, 7, 5, 3, 1. Fifth mode: first, third, fifth, seventh, root, 7, 5, 3, 1. Sixth mode: first, third, fifth, seventh, root, 7th, 5, third, roots. Seventh, here's our first, third, fifth, seventh, root, 7, 5, 3, 1. And then we're back at the root. So to find this, all you're going to do is take each of those scales, find the first, third, fifth, and seventh notes of the scale, play them one right after the other. And that's going to give you the arpeggio for each of these. So one more quick review over this. Here is the first one. Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, then we're back at the roots. So it's going to take a little bit of practice. Don't feel like you have to rush it. You are going to get things wrong at first, but that's part of the process. Don't give up, and don't beat yourself up. Just keep working it out. Use the formulas, trust the formulas, and you will get the right answers. What you're going to notice as you play through all of the arpeggios in each of those modes is that each of them have a certain quality or characteristic about them. So if we play our first mode here, sounds pretty major, right? So if we play our second one, sounds minor. Third, sounds minor. Fourth, sounds major. The fifth one sounds kind of bluesy. Sixth. Sixth sounds minor. And the seventh one sounds kind of mysterious, right? So what this is telling us is the different qualities of the chords that are associated to each of these scales and arpeggios, or the modes within this key. So how do we figure those out? Well, it's going to be the same thing as our arpeggios, but we need to figure out how we can play them simultaneously and not one right after the other, right? So instead of this, we need to figure out how we can do this. So that's going to be the process of creating the chords that correspond to each of these modes in arpeggios and scales. So what we can do is we can take some of the notes out of here. Obviously, if there's two notes that exist on a string, you're going to want to take one away. So let's go ahead and start with that first arpeggio there. So it's going to be a little experimentation. You're going to find the ones that sound right, sound good, and sound bad. So let's go ahead and start with the first one here. I'm going to leave the root in, and we can see that the root and the third exist on that string together. So we got to take one of those away. So I'm going to get rid of the third. So here's our first, fifth, and seventh. And that would be one way to play that chord. You'll hear a lot of guys out there say don't play roots. It's totally a preference thing. If you like playing roots, definitely play roots. But just so you can hear what that sounds like, let's go ahead and take the root out and play the third. So instead of this, we're going to take this guy out and play the third. Those notes on their own sound minor, but you will find if you play that over a major chord, it's going to work. It's going to sound good. But for me, I kind of prefer to have that root in there. So totally up to you if you want the root or the third. Totally your call. So again, here's our root voicing. Here's our third voicing. So let's take this process and apply it to each of the modes in the arpeggios and scales within this key. So let's go ahead and go to our second mode. So there's our arpeggio, 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 7, 5, 3, 1. Same process here. Let's get rid of that third. I'm going to play 1, 5, 1, 5, and 7. So that'll be one way to play it there. I'm going first finger would be 7th fret of the 7th string, or 7th fret of the E string, sorry. Pinky on the 9th of the A, and then middle on the 7th of the D string. Or you could bar it if you want. Totally up to you how you want to play that. So that would be our root, 5th, and 7th. Let's go ahead and test that against the 3rd now. So here's our 3rd. 3rd, 5th, 7th, and roots. So this one sounds major, but again, if you play that 3rd note voicing there, that's going to fit over a minor chord if you wanted to. Again, totally preference. For me, I choose the root voicing. Now let's go ahead and move to our 3rd. 1st, 3rd, 5th, 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th, and roots. So here's our 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th. I'm going to take that 3rd out, play the root, 5th, and 7th. So there's my chord for my 3rd mode. Here's our 4th. I'm going to take that 3rd out, again play the root, 5th, 7th. There's the fourth mode chord right there. I'm going to go ahead and move to the 5th. First, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 5th, 3rd, and roots. So here's our 1st, 5th, and that makes our chord for our 5th mode there. Now let's move to our 6th mode. First, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 5th, 3rd, roots. I'm going to play the 5th, 1st, 5th, and 7th. And that'll be our chord for the 6th mode. Now let's take our 7th mode here. 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th, root. I'm going to play 1st, 5th, and 7th there. And that's going to make up our 7th mode chord. And then we're back at the roots. So now if we kind of basically just kind of go through these chords, you're going to hear a scale happening within this chord movement, and that is the goal you're trying to go for here. So here's our root, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, back to the root. So now this is a very, very basic breakdown of this. These chords, we can make them sound a little better, but for your introduction, just your basic bare skin and bones to understand how this works, I would suggest doing it this way that we just went over. All right, so if you want to make these chords sound a little more big or pretty, if you will, I like to make my voicings a little more lush, if that makes sense. So what that means is we're going to play more like 3rds and 7ths in our voicings. You can play the roots as well. Put the 5th in there if you need to, but I'm going to kind of go through these real quick, and then I'll explain what I'm doing and how you can find these chords for yourself. So here's my first chord. This will be Ionian or the root major. Here's my second chord. 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and then here is my root again. And you'll notice that those chords sound a little prettier, a little nicer. I think they just add a certain characteristic and quality to the chords. I think they sound a little better, but that's to my ears. You might do the basic way and find you like that better than this. So it's totally preference, totally up to you. But the way I find these chords is we're going to start with those arpeggios we went over. And the way the guitar is built, sometimes we're not going to be able to play every note that's in our arpeggio, right? Because we have multiple notes that exist on one string. So we have to find a way to make those notes fit into the chord. And this is where we're going to be kind of knowing your modes up and down the neck and in different positions and in different shapes within those positions kind of comes into play here. So we know we have a third here, but if we go through our scale from a different perspective, we know we've got another third right here. So that's where you can start kind of putting these different voicings into play. So now we've got different ways to play these voicings here. All valid and viable ways to play that major or Ionian chord. So it's kind of going to be a thing that you're going to have to experiment and play around with. And one way you can do that is by playing multiple octaves and multiple positions within that given scale or key. So you have to experiment with this. So here's the first one we could do, right? 3 note per string. Let's do another 2 octave. This will be starting on the middle finger on the root. Let's start from here now. So you can see there's multiple ways that we can play these scales, and if you learn all these ways, which I do highly suggest doing, then you're going to have much more options to create the chords and the sounds that you want, and you're just going to have a much broader knowledge of the fretboard and be able to use it in any way that you desire, rather than feeling stuck like you're having to guess where to go. So I highly suggest working on your chords and scales in this way. So again, let's go ahead and take this arpeggio. Same thing we did where we played 2 octaves and we played up and down the scale. We're going to do that in all the different ways we can play it here. Right? So this is going to be a way for you to find the different notes. So if I played my first major chord like this, we're going to figure out what each of those notes are, right? So here's our root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's go ahead and use that shape to figure out the intervallic functions here. So here's 1, 2, I'm sorry, let's start over. So we have root, this is the chord. We have root. I'm playing a 7th here. One, 2, 3. So there's my third. 1, 1, 2, 3. Sorry, 1, 7, 3. And I'm playing this note as well. That's our 5th. And that's where I came up with the shape to be able to play this major chord in that way. So I've got my 1st here, I've got a 7th, a 3rd, and a 5th. And that's going to be the same process you're going to use to come up with all these chords in this key. So we can do the same thing for our next mode, right? So here's our root, 7th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3rd. There's my 3rd again. 7, 3rd, and my 5th. The 3rd is going to be the same thing. Now the 4th, this is kind of a debatable thing. You can play a major chord here, But since this chord has a sharp 11 in it, the Lydian mode has a sharp 11 or sharp 4. There's our sharp 4. We want to try to include that quality of that chord in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, root. 7, 6, 5, sharp 4, roots. So if I played my basic major there, we want to try to include that note. So if my 5th is here, I could play my sharp 4 right there. So instead of playing this, I'm going to swap my middle finger to that root, and from here, slide the first finger down a half step. And now I have a Lydian chord to go with that scale type right there. So far we have now I want a dominant chord here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 roots. So this is the chord I played here. I'm playing roots, 7th, 3rd, and 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, root 2, 3, 4, 5, or 5, 6, flat 7, roots. Alright, and then the next one is going to be our minor. That was the same one as 2 and 3. I'm going to play it down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 roots. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 roots. So here's my chord. I'm playing roots, 5th, 7, flat 3rd. And that's how I'm coming up with the chord type for that one. And then we'll go to our 7th or the Locrian. This is my chord here. So for this one I'm playing root, root, flat 5. That'll be my 7th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this one is root, roots, flat 5, flat 7, flat 3rd. And then that brings me back to the Ionian mode. So now we've got some nicer chords to work with here, and it should broaden up your sound or your ideas that you can now use. The last thing to note here is as we went through each of those, we briefly spoke about how each of those chords had a certain quality or characteristic to it, and we kind of went over that. So again, that's major, minor, minor, major, dominant, minor, and this one will be half diminished is what we call it, and then a major 7. Alright, so the last thing I'm going to show you is how to practice this, and it's pretty much just going to be a simplified version of this entire video. So pretty much we're going to do 3 things. We're going to work with our scales, arpeggios, and chords. So I would probably practice working through each mode up and down that scale like this. And so on until you get through all the modes. The next thing you're going to do is same thing with the arpeggios. Again, all the way through all 7 modes there. And then the last thing you're going to do is your chord types as well. until you get through all 7 modes. And you don't have to just stop there. I encourage you to experiment around with this. After you've kind of done up and down your scales, arpeggios, and chords in that one way, try figuring out other ways you can do it in other positions and in other scale shapes and stuff like that. So that is everything I have for you guys today. I hope you gained some knowledge out of this, and I hope you have a better understanding of diatonic theory and how it relates to the guitar. If there's something you guys need help understanding a little better or something you're not fully grasping, feel free to leave a comment below and I will be happy to answer any questions you have. And also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, you guys are liking the content you're seeing, if it's helping you out, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, follow, share, all that jazz. And I'll see you guys in the next one.